Bills Mafia, we've got to be honest about something here on this Saturday night. Preseason games are fun, and you want to buy the tickets. They're like a third of the cost, and I know we don't have any more home game preseason games this year, but you want to go see Josh Allen in a uniform. The scoreboard is running, and for a very few hours each and every week in August, we feel like football is back. But here's the catch, and we know this, is that the preseason games really don't tell us who the Buffalo Bills are, right? The preseason games are the parade before the season. It's like the fireworks show, but the real work is happening in the heat of joint practices. And this week, the Bills faced off against the Chicago Bears, and just like every year, we saw and we continue to see why joint practices matter way more than preseason games. Well, hey, welcome to Crack the Table, where we're all Bills, no breaks. My name's Colin, and today I just want to do a little bit of a breakdown, maybe a chiller video on the idea of how joint practices are actually really meaningful for us as a team and for all teams, but how we can really glean great insights into them. And we should really be paying attention to what some of the media members and beat reporters are saying about this team and even about the Bears, and how our players are matching up with their players before September hits, because it's going to give us a real beat on where things are at before we head into the fall. But think of it this way. A preseason game is kind of like a concert. It's fun, it's loud, there's a lot of energy wherever you go, but it's not like the band just shows up to the concert and it's just actually is really good, right? That happens in the rehearsals, in the practices, and the long hours of grinding in the studio, running the same songs, and over and over trying to hit the perfect note, or trying to make sure that people are working together perfectly. And that's where I think joint practices come in for an NFL team. They're not they're the rehearsals, they're not the performance, right? We love preseason football in August because we're just so deprived of football for so long. If you're like me, like I like basketball, I like March Madness, I like watching other sports throughout the year, but I don't really get into any other sport outside of NFL. I love, like, college football is fun too, but like the NFL is just a game that's beyond all the others, in my opinion. And like, even if you ask Sean McDermott about something like this, he'll straight up tell you that you learn more in 2 joint practices than you learn in 4 quarters of preseason football. And the question for us would be like, why? Why do we learn more things in 2 joint practices than we do in, let's say, a multiple preseason games? It comes down ultimately to the idea that the coaches can control everything. They script a 3rd and 10 or red zone plays, or wherever they want. They can scheme up any sort of play that they want to in a joint practice and run it 5 or 10 times in a row. Again, McDermott's just like, it doesn't really matter. Preseason games just don't really matter that much. And we know this as fans. They're really good and really important and really awesome for players who are like in their rookie year, or they're a UDFA. Like, they're just trying to make a roster. They're trying to, show up on tape and make their way on the team. But like, for us as Bills fans who care really, the only thing we care about is winning the Super Bowl. Like, the players most of the time that are going to contribute consistently are the players that are just playing well in joint practices. And again, I believe that's where you separate the middle tier players, or the middle tier squads, teams, from really the top tier playoff contenders. Is what do they look like in joint practices? We hear about this all the time in the league, where there's a joint practice that's happening around the league, and one team is absolutely dominating every rep. And then you go to the game and the team that was dominating loses. And you're like, what is happening? Well, yeah, we're starting Joe Blow from his mom's couch that just came in. And I say Joe Blow, that's funny, Buffalo Joe. Kind of a fun story there. But like, same idea, where it's like you get a guy who's kind of from nowhere. They come in, they don't really know the system, they don't really know what's going on, and then they try to play these preseason snaps, and we're watching the football because we're so deprived of football, and we just want it to work, right? We're just so ready for September. We're so ready for football to start. But this week, against the Chicago Bears, I think the Bills used their opportunity to really show up. And I want to talk about a couple of those things. The first one is that the defensive line was dominant. Andy Young, he said this. He says the Bills pass rush has really been heating up in practice today. Joey Bosa had a couple of sacks, Greg Rousseau another, and plenty of pressures from other guys like Landon Jackson. Just talking about our edge rush. And I'll be honest, I don't really think if I'm an honest Bills fan here right now, I have to acknowledge that if our defensive talent is not dominating the Chicago Bears in joint practices right now, I would be a little bit worried, right? Not that the Chicago Bears are terrible, like their offensive line should be okay, right? But like this is the most deep, talented and healthy group that we have had as a Buffalo Bills team in the last 10 years. We should expect one-on-one dominance in these situational reps, especially when we're doing the third down ones, right? Especially when it's all out go. Our players should be showing out, and they did, right? And that's a really good sign. Again, these things are not happening. These opportunities wouldn't be showing up in the fourth quarter of a preseason game when rookies and fringe even roster players are on the field. These are our defensive players that are going to be starting week in and week out, dominating against this Ben Johnson offense, this former number 1 overall pick in Caleb Williams, and this potentially rising Bears team. We'll see about that. But it wasn't just the pass rush though this last week. Our front 7 players, I'm so excited. This group is going to be, they're absolute game wreckers. In the middle, on the outside, even our linebackers, Daquan Jones, Matt Milano, Dorian Williams, clogged up lanes and forced stops right at the line. In coverage, Taylor Rapp, Christian Benford doing their thing, right? They combined for multiple stops, especially even against second-year player Roma Dunze, which is a very good sign. He's going to be a good receiver. And he didn't even allow him to make a catch in bounds that would have been a touchdown. We love to see those things. But those high leverage plays, those situational plays that are set up specifically by the offense and the defense, they don't really happen unless we have these joint practices where they are being kind of forged or put together or simulated. Again, now preseason games usually, I think, frustrate us even as people, because we were like, oh, I want to go to the preseason game because I want to see, I want to go take my kids and I want to go see Josh Allen, or I want to go see my favorite player, and they don't even play a snap, right? Or maybe Josh Allen goes in and he throws maybe 5 passes or a handoff or 2, and they don't even get into a rhythm on offense. But like, again, in these joint practices, the reason they matter and the reason they are like the real test is our offense and our defense simultaneously can get 40, 50, or 60 reps in a single day, right? Even this last week, Elijah Moore, he can catch a screen, he can cut inside, he can turn a 10-yard gain. He had his best practice of the entire camp probably this week, right? Josh Palmer pulled down a touchdown in the red zone despite tight coverage. Keon Coleman played all right. And then again, this is just the type of repetition and chemistry that you want to see, learn from, and grow in, and ultimately continually be able to make tweaks before September. It only can happen in that setting. But here's the truth. Preseason games, they're built for us. They're built for us as fans because they're kind of like the parade, right? They get us back into football. They let us go buy tickets. They let us go buy new jerseys or wear our jerseys, support the rookies. They let us cheer for these depth guys, and they just give us an appetite. They're just an appetizer to what's to come. Again, for McDermott and his staff, joint practices are gold. You can answer questions like, hey, can Cole Bishop actually hand a starting rep against another team's first unit? Well, if his quad injury wasn't so consistent, maybe we would see that, right? Or does this offensive line have the ability to continue to hold up, excel, and play as well as they did last year or even better, right? And how is the chemistry building between Josh Allen and some of these new receivers, aka Elijah Moore, right? But every one of those questions is being tested by our coaching staff, particularly under that microscope of joint practices that we might never ever see or might never even hear about because of something not getting reported on by beat reporters, right? We're not always there. We don't always get to see these things. But that's why when we hear press conferences, when we hear what beat reporters are talking about, both for Chicago and even for the Bills this last week, we want to pay attention to those because that information is, generally speaking, going to be more valuable than the preseason games themselves. Again, so what does this mean for Buffalo? These storylines of Bosa and Rousseau developing as maybe one of the nastiest duos in the NFL, we want that, right? Is Elijah Moore going to become this? Maybe, I know Stefon Diggs left a couple of years ago, but he's going to be that level of receiver. Can he be a 1A, or a 1B receiver for this team alongside Khalil Shakir and Josh Palmer and Keon Coleman now. We're trying to get those answers. We're trying to figure out what our rotation is. Again, preseason highlights are fun. And, of course, as Bills fans, like, we're sending each other these text messages with these videos of this player doing that thing, and look at this run, or look at this tackle by this rookie. Look at how they ran across the line and did this or that, right? But they can fade oftentimes because they're not getting meaningful reps in September through February oftentimes. But Bills Mafia, don't get me wrong. I love preseason football, frankly, more than anybody, because it lets summer breathe a little bit, and we're all getting back into the rhythm of school with parenting and everything. But even within that, we've got to pay attention to the grind of the joint practices. But my question for you is this: what is your favorite part of preseason games? Drop your comment in the comments below. But just do me a favor here a second. If you're still watching this video, I appreciate that. I appreciate it. We're trying to grow this channel. Smash the like button, subscribe, and don't miss a breakdown. We've got some really fun content coming out this week. But not only that, this is Colin, or I'm Colin. This is Crack the Table. We are all Bills, no breaks. I'll see you tomorrow.